Thank you all for joining us today. I know it's the last of the session, the evening session, but we want to make it more engaging, interactive, rather than a one-way flow. And I hope our host for today is Snowflake, and uh, the topic is data trends for 2025 retail and consumer goods industry. So basically, we first start with a small video, and then we focus on 4 or 5 broad areas where each of you can share your insights on those areas, and maybe we have a snowflake view on what is their take on that. So let's first start with a video. Over to-
The retail and consumer packaged goods industry has changed forever. With higher customer expectations, personalization must be deployed at every touchpoint while protecting the privacy of consumers. And supply chains must be adaptable to unforeseen market changes and trends in real time. Businesses must leverage data to ensure speed, resilience, convenience, and quality. These organizations need a secure and scalable platform to centralize, govern, and activate insightful data. Introducing the Snowflake Retail Data Cloud. This global data network empowers organizations to improve customer experiences, power marketing, merchandising, and supply chain decisions, and increase margins. With the Retail Data Cloud, businesses can ensure strict data governance and compliance with regulatory guidelines while sharing data with distribution and marketing partners. Through the Snowflake Data Marketplace, businesses can instantly access industry data sets such as consumer demographics, weather, and in-store foot traffic, allowing your organization to utilize data to hyper-personalize every interaction, optimize pricing and promotions, and improve supply chain operations. Build better customer experiences with the Retail Data Cloud. Snowflake.
Thank you. So the first segment where we want to focus around is data and AI. Today, consumer demand across channels has been increasing. We see that customer in store needs this personalized greetings, or needs those special offers which is available online. So the first part of the whole segment is, how do leaders use data and AI to meet evolving consumer behavior, supply chain dynamics, and more. So if all of you can maybe share your viewpoints around this, starting from Ranjan. Yeah.
Thanks, Bhavesh. I think it's a large topic. We've all been talking about data for years, and this is always an endless journey because you start with data in mind. You start building data across different platforms because that's not the first thing that you start thinking about. You start thinking about the process, the functionality, the purpose of what you want to deliver first, and then you start thinking about the data, and that's a big challenge. How you store the data, how you aggregate that data, how you report the data back, or how do you make sense out of the data, and that's been the conventional way. If you look at, I was talking to somebody in the morning today, and the classic thing, and I remember 20 years back I did the same thing as well, and again we've kept doing the same mistakes. We implement an ERP, and the first thing that we keep looking about is ERP में चाहिए क्या? Ensure that your business is up and running. Ensure that your purchase order is being done. You are able to do your goods receipt. You are able to do ship out your merchandise. You are able to get the sales data from your point of sale, report it back, do your financials. I think that's the biggest priority. We never come from a mindset of saying, how do I use this data after this? That is what is changing. The way how you used to implement ERP maybe 20 years back, 10 years back, that's changing. Because now you also start thinking from a perspective of what data you are expecting from that each of those systems, each of those processes that you are implementing. How do you bring that data into maybe a centralized repository, or even you're not getting into a centralized repository, how do you report the data back? How do you start making sense out of that data? How do you start leveraging that data? And this is an endless journey. Believe me, there's never an end. Today, whatever maturity we all might be sitting at, this is going to be a very, very early stage for us 2 years down the line, because that would have changed. The world would have changed. The ask would have changed. CDP, we have been talking for ages. Today, CDP is given. What are we talking about CDP? How do you bring all of that data to start making sense for that particular customer, that individual customer, so that you are able to personalize his journey to the unit of one? Whether he's coming to you on a social media, whether he's coming to your e-commerce platform, whether he's coming to your store. Now, one thing that you also keep forgetting about is how do you identify that customer when he's walking into your store? Again, you need some kind of a data sense. And with the government's involvement more into the data privacy and things like that coming in, I think it is also very, very important to be able to think from a perspective of how do you tie all that knot to be able to make it more secure from a consumer's perspective, from an employee's perspective, from the organization's perspective as well. So there are multiple things around data. We all are on a journey, and we are constantly on a journey for data. I always keep saying there's never an end to data. You always keep discovering and rediscovering.
I think in our pursuit of data, a lot of times we forget that there is a human element of a customer, and a lot of times that data can be used to make that individual's life or decision making better, right? And if one keeps the customer as the North Star and works back on how one wants to leverage data, one will end up being more successful. That being said, with AI and all coming in and CDP, one of the first things and consistently that has happened with whoever is implemented a CDP or AI, you realize the quality of your data or the lack of the quality of one's data, right? A lot of times as organizations, retailers directly want to reach the goal, but there are steps behind that. And the discipline in ensuring how you manage, clean the data, okay, determines the success that one gains. Today we are spoiled for data, but in terms of intelligence on what to do with those data, or primarily those business events that are there, is a key challenge. And if Snowflake, for example, can provide a system to handle the velocity, to handle the clarity of that data, and transformation and insights, okay, is when one will reach a plateau of productivity. Thank you.
Hi. I think for me, AI data is something like how do you divide it between the customer and how do you divide it between a company. So while you put the customer in the front end and you say that how do you want to make his journey more personalized, more accurate on the platform if they go uh, within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever is the session time. I think 20 seconds is the session time, right? So within that 20 session, he should be able to find his product and do a checkout, a seamless checkout. How do you do that? And with, of course, with the CRP, CDP tools and ERP systems, you kind of make sure that you are showing the right product to the right person or the consumer who has come in. While at the back end, I would need that cloud to also define what is the kind of inventories that we need to hold, what is the kind of best inventory, which place they can hold, to be able to optimize my inventory and give me the best of the margins in whatever platform, whether it is D2C, our own thing, or a third party warehouse, where to store the data and which platform will give me the best of the data. Sorry, margins. So I think that's where I would need the cloud to be participating in my journey. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, Divya. Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Abhishek from Marks and Spencer. So I think I'll talk about where we are today and what the future looks like, where we need to go. Today, data is about simple data warehousing, collecting, master data management, and creating BI reports, depending on which user wants what cut of that report. but it's a foundation, uh, foundation which will enable predictive data, predictable data. How can you predict the user behavior? It also means enabling AI agents, because going forward we will see a lot of agents coming and automating tasks. They can only function if the data source to them is right, and it is also about responsible AI, which means that the data which goes in to give these predictions for these agents should not have bias, right? So there is a big gap, right? So we have tools. We are very happy users of Snowflake as well. Tools enable the warehousing bit. Tools enable creating a BI layer on top of it. The gap is how do we move to the next phase, which is about predictive, which is about responsible, and which is about AI agents. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek.
So I'm Indresh. I work for Apparel Group. I think Abhishek and I are at the same level. So I don't know when Marks and Spencer started with Snowflake, but we started our journey a year and a half back, maybe. It was a slow start. It was absolute slow start. Uh, we did take some initial big steps. So we first moved all our offline data. Then we started doing online data, and we reached a level where you know all the business needs in terms of reporting were covered. Like Ranjan was saying, you always start with base reporting. Sales kitna hua, Monday report, Tuesday report, monthly report, quarterly report. We did achieve that very, very quickly on Snowflake, right? We had to take a pause because there were other priorities. But in the last couple of months, we have started building our own team of data scientists and data engineers, because we realized we now have data collected in Snowflake. It is streamlined to very great extent. It is clean. It took us literally year and a half to get it clean and get it right. But we have that. So in the last couple of months, we have started focusing on what next. We started actually investing in. We realized a normal Power BI guy or MIS guy has a limited thinking. He will think CIO, CEO को क्या चाहिए और CFO को क्या चाहिए. To actually use the data effectively, you actually need to spend on data engineers and data scientists who think differently, who can look at data differently, and then look at how do you build a journey in terms of personalization, or like everybody was saying, how do you identify that last person who needs to be targeted for a promotion, or needs to. I was in another forum. I was telling, if one person from a family is shopping across all my brands, the pattern goes really bad, because you will see a man shopping in Aldo for a shoe, and the same man shopping in Victoria's Secrets, and then Bath and Body Works, and then Charles and Keith. And one Charles and Keith, there's a sandal that is getting bought. Bath and Body Works, there's a our best selling shower gel is getting bought. Aldo, a white shoe, men's shoe is getting bought, and VS is completely different. Yeah, it confuses the end user as to the inside user as to what the hell is happening, right? Now, if I get a SMS about Victoria's Secrets, it doesn't make sense to me. Probably my card was used, but my wife. Okay, and that is the problem right now we're dealing with. How to, as the Ranjan said, actually finding the customer and not the buyer, because the buyer can be different. Buyer is me, but customer is somebody else in the family. It may be my teenage daughter going to Bath and Body Works. Yeah, so sending a SMS to me on Bath and Body Works doesn't help. So we are at that stage of the journey where we are trying to figure out how to find the last customer and not the buyer. Yeah.
Great. Vinod?
So I think data actually, the entire data strategy is actually built on four pillars to start with. The first one being how data collection is happening, how the data processing is happening, how is the data reporting happening, and eventually the data security, which encompasses all the first three areas that I'm touching about. All of these require certain specified actions to actually make sense to start with. And that is something that needs to be defined very clearly as a requirement first. At Trent, what we have tried to do is looked at all of these four areas individually and have tried to make sure that whatever we are doing is actually culminating into a answer to the requirement that the business has to start with. And once that is defined extremely clearly, because a lot of times what happens, Bhavesh, is people end up saying that I am doing something on data, I'm doing data analytics, but merging data and then trying to make sense out of it doesn't help, because a lot of times people end up in that space saying, okay, I have created a fantastic data lake, all my data databases are combined together, but I don't know what to do with it now, because business has never asked for it, and obviously there is something else that that an outcome is. So true. Actually, Ranjan, that's so true, Ranjan. Actually, business अभी वही बोलता है कि just give me my dump and I will figure out what I want to do with it. So it is very important that you get business onboarded first, right? The business teams have to be onboarded first. They have to agree that this is something that can change their lives. People feel that they are actually working when they are actually massaging data. It is not the case. Massaging data is a waste of time, but they feel that they are working and adding value to the organization. That is a behavioral change that has to happen to start with, and then eventually how you use the technology to create multiple outcomes, include use AI to make work easier for them, and actually they go and spend more time on analyzing the data, the outcomes that have come, to analyze and take business decisions out of it, rather than just massaging the data. And that is where the focus is, and that's what we are trying. We have not even probably scratched the surface there, but that's what we are trying to do as a tool to use.
Thank you. Kunal, your review?
I think very similar to what most of the people have said, right? Also, you need to figure out how are you, like everyone said, how are you really going to use your data? And you've got structured data, you've got unstructured data. How are you getting everything on one platform? And what is going to be the real business case of you using it, right? And like everyone, we've got multiple systems. You've got an SAP on one side, you've got your e-commerce on the other side, you've got your .coms, WMS. I mean, so many systems that one uses, your POS. To get everything on a single platform and then really define what is going to be the structure, what are going to be the key KPIs that you're trying to get out of it, which function really needs what is the roadmap for each of these functions also, right? Because everyone will be in a different journey. Your digital team will have a different journey defined for themselves in terms of what they want to achieve with the data. Your supply chain will have a different journey in terms of what do they want to achieve with that data. So also for each function, you've got to sit with them and define what data means to them and what is going to be their success in terms of what you're trying to achieve. If you have that in place, I think then the roadmap is much more easier, right? And everything else follows with that, whether you use AI, you use ML, these are all great terms to have, and they're very important to have also in an organization. I think anyone who says, I don't like AI and I'm not, I don't really use it, or I don't want to use it, you don't have a choice. You have to be on that path. That's a given for anyone. How big or small you are, it doesn't matter, right? But how are you getting there, and what's the journey to achieve it, and how do you make that a success story? That's something which an organization needs to figure out.
Thanks. Let's hear from Snowflake team. Yash is here. What is his view on?
Thank you. You can all hear me, right? Okay, so before I even get to the question and the viewpoint, let me start by thanking all of you for being here. Despite the news that we heard on Sindoor and the rains, I was wondering how many people would turn up, but thank you and genuinely appreciate you guys taking the time to come here. And before I get to again the view, maybe I'll give you a little background of what Snowflake is doing in the country, and then I will come to the points that you all have mentioned. So we've been here in the country for about 3.5-4 years. Over 220 plus customers. Globally, if you look at it, we are I think about 7,000 plus customers, and roughly 3.5 to 4 billion kind of a business annually. Having said that, almost 20% of our business is in the retail space today. In fact, we've recently launched something. We've launched a industry, while we are an industry agnostic platform, we've launched the Retail AI Data Cloud. So a lot of customers give us tons of feedback on what they are, experiencing with the platform, and then we kind of take it back to product, and we try and also tailor-make product or, outcomes which are specific to retail as an industry. My background, I've been here at Snowflake for about a year. Prior to that, the likes of Oracle, Salesforce, where I've also, met some of you during the marketing cloud, analytics cloud, and now data. So I understand, or I'm privileged to be understanding a lot of points that you guys called out with regard to right time, personalization, so on and so forth. And before that, I was working in the retail industry with, I started my career in Titan. And after that, Vodafone. So understand the pressures of, of primary sales, secondary sales, revenue per square feet, so on and so forth. So great to be here, honored to be here. To come to the point, outside of what you're seeing on the slide, one of the things that we're trying to address for a lot of customers, outside of just the common part of bringing all the data together and giving you that single view of the customer that everyone's talking about. Sometimes I think that you guys may be somewhere getting bored because every guy who comes and meets you talks about C360, customer, what is that, cross-channel orchestration, and all kinds of jargons, right? I myself did it, so I'm not blaming anyone. But end of the day, a lot of customers used to tell me कि यार ये सब जो बताया ना अभी हिंदी में बताया उसको, and I would not know कि what is the cross-channel orchestration of Hindi, right? But essentially it was about going back and saying that whatever you're doing, we are going to be that one single platform that's going to be helping you drive either revenue or save cost or making your life easy, and essentially that's what we do. So to give you an example, and to answer the question as well of a lot of points that you all mentioned, one of the examples right here in the country, which is Swiggy. While Abhishek can talk about it length on what they do with Snowflake, thank you for being here. But at the same time, the one which is one of our oldest customers, I think more than 3 years plus, they pretty much run their entire business on Snowflake. Petabytes of data, I think close to 3.5 million plus partners that are kind of measured or tracked in terms of who should be where, what's the kind of food that goes in which city, what's the kind of offers that go into one particular area. So for example, if it's a Hyderabad and it's a biryani versus let's say it's Lucknow and it's a tunde kababi or so on and so forth, to also kind of bringing in the data, which is what we're doing next, is where you bring in the weather data. For example, if it's raining right now, how do you jack up that time, so on and so forth. So various things about how do you make sure that you're not just improving your rider experience, but also your customer experience by delivering that message that this is what you're looking for, and also preempting what somebody else could be wanting to order. So for example, if I'm somebody who's ordered a category ABC, the next time I'm coming in, while I will see a promotion on ABC, but can I then also upsell and cross-sell, right? How much, end of the day, it all boils down to how close can you get to your customer and how much can you personalize. So that's one of the things that we do in retail, but lovely to hear your thoughts, and happy to talk at length about these. I don't want to hold you guys at this time of the day, but want to would love to hear more in terms of where are you struggling and how can we work together.
Thanks, Yash. So the second part is about the legacy systems. There has always been challenge when you want to implement some new solution, and legacy systems have been an issue. So what have been the operational challenges with when you have encountered with legacy systems, and how do you impede this real-time decision making? So if you can, all of you can share your views quickly, maybe in few lines.
So I think legacy systems are bound to happen, and they will always remain in the ecosystem, and we'll have to figure out a way, because what got created as a system maybe 15 years back, I might not be able to write it off. I might not find the time to write it off and do something new, because there's always so much more pressure to do something new. Taking a decision to shutting that off or sunsetting a system is always a huge decision. We all under tremendous pressure to keep moving forward. But at the same time, I think it's also important at some point of time to be able to take a decision in terms of shutting it down, or maybe able to find a way. And what we've, as retailers, we've always seen doing fantastic things, but one thing we keep forgetting is about the master data piece. That's the core, that's the heart. And if you don't fix the master data itself, you don't have the right sense of what kind of data you need to have. How do you define the right master data which makes sense? And as retailers, we all would have seen, यार merchandise hierarchy हर 3-4 साल में change कर देते हैं यार. क्या sense रहेगा? And how do you make sense out of one data which existed 4 years back, and then how do you map it to today's data? These are needs of the business, because the business says, my business is growing, we are evolving, we are changing, we are adding new categories. Our businesses are becoming big. Our categories businesses are becoming big. So now we need to split. We need to add more categories. Same thing that you would have said at one point of time, you're calling it something else. How do you start mapping all of the data? That's a bigger challenge from a legacy system perspective. And not just legacy, but any of the data, any of the transaction system that you talk of today. So I think the bigger worry is not about bringing the data, as I said earlier as well. It's not about bringing the data once and setting it forever. It's never going to happen. We always have to keep going back, relooking at the data, because the data keeps changing shape and form. And how do you still keep mapping and keep making sense of something like that? I remember at one point of time, linen pant was a very, very small category. हम उसको trousers में deal classify करते थे ना यार, pants में हम classify करते थे. Today linen has become a big one. Now it is treated as a separate category. Now imagine how do you map it to what we would have been talking about 5 years back or 6 years back. These things will happen. This is a change which is going to bound to happen. For some reason or the other, there was a store which had a different store code. Today that store could be different, but the same store exists physically. How do you map? Because the behavior remains the same. Or maybe the behavior would have changed for that same store code. These are very basic small things which you will have to learn and pick up and keep adding into your data sets to be able to, and these are the bigger problems to solve actually, because bringing the data once, setting up a data lake, I think in a greenfield project, very easy, very simple. To keep running that and keep making sense out of that data, I think you need to create a stronger fabric below that to be able to make sense of what was done 5 years back. And if we have to make a change today, what do you change it to and how do you change it to? Half of the time, the guy who would have done that change 5 years back, that guy does not exist, and there is not enough documentation available. Karoge kaise? How do you know what was done 5 years back? And the worst thing is you can't go back to your business guy and say, hey, हमें तो पता ही नहीं है करना कैसे है यार, किया कैसे था ये? Because you're an IT guy, you're supposed to know everything. So I think it's a very, very peculiar problem from a legacy system, but this is always going to exist for all of us, I'm sure. We all have gone through it, and we find a ways to be able to solve those problems, and these are the bigger problems to solve rather than picking up, because e-commerce data बहुत recent है. वहाँ पे फिर भी बहुत cleanliness है. You had some sense of e-commerce data. Your biggest problem is still your ERP data. If your ERP is 10 years, 12 years, 15 years old, then you would have upgraded your ERP to, आपने start किया ECC 5 से, move किया ECC 6 में, अब S4 पे बैठे हो. How has the data changed? How many people remember how that data has changed? So I think this is an ongoing journey, as I kept saying. Data is always an ongoing journey. What you would have defined today is going to become obsolete 2 years down the line, or maybe even 6 months down the line. You never know.
So the question was on legacy and how do you handle real-time or near real-time decision making. Now, in all organizations, legacy systems are there and will continue to be there because they were built for a particular purpose, and for whatever reason or lack thereof, they are doing the work that was assigned to those systems. Now, just because someone wants to take a real-time decision, changing the legacy system might be an expensive affair to begin with. That's where today we have a lot of extract, transform, load tools, and Snowflake also provides some of those, where one can neatly bypass the problem, right, by pulling the data into the cloud or any external high velocity system, process it, and basis that render results out there. Now, typically, all of us do business in primarily two avatars. You have offline business and you have online business. In offline, for all practical purposes, when a customer comes in, he or she comes in, you are able to accurately ascertain what that person finally or whom that person is finally shopping for, right? That is the avatar. Whether you're shopping as a gift for someone, you're shopping for your child, you're shopping for your spouse, etc. However, the same, okay, cannot be very easily ascertained when there's an online avatar of that individual, right? And that is where systems or third party, and typically the online systems are never the legacy systems, right? So you are able to bypass the problem there itself. However, the difficult challenge is in ascertaining what that particular session is attempting to do. Like someone mentioned, what is the avatar that is shopping as against the individual that is shopping. So I feel personally that the overall thing of real-time decision making in offline is a bit overhyped. And in online, if you're not able to do that, then you're not doing a job to begin with. Thanks.
Well, I'm not the IDP person out here, I think. But what I vaguely remember out of my thing is there has always been a hesitance to change any ERP system, going from up OMS system le lo, ERP system le lo. I think there's always a scary, it's a scary thing because one, there is always, no matter how much you say plug in, it will just happen. It's a 4 hour, no, thanks. 4 hours loss of sales or something like that. But I have seen 2 ERP changes in Globus, and trust me, it's been a nightmare. Okay, changing ERP systems from Genesis, SAP to Genesis, and then you lose a lot of data. Plus, when you are implementing a new data, I think what really scares is everyone wants their field inside the ERP. ERP has limited fields that you can kind of have. But if you take buying people inside and say, okay, what fields do you want for your data? If you take marketing people, they will ask for their own data. Everyone wants their own data, and the data is forever. I think the lines just keep increasing. I think um, that's my vague memory of changing any ERP system or something like that. But yes, once you have that in place, I think it's important how you extract the data. You should really know what fields you need to put in, and what will help you at the end to be able to kind of get that data, fine tune it into the daily usage, intelligence, into your, of course, customer journey can be side timed with the extra tool, but your inventory, your processes, your warehousing, your, you know, everything that you want to feed in, that's attributes, everything needs to be fed in very, very well to be able to make sense out of the data then finally that you want to possess.
Yeah, we move to the next one. What around the ROI. A lot of investments go in these solutions, and we need to understand, and then the CTO's responsibility is to make sure that he's able to convince the management on the ROI. So what kind of framework do you think you need to put into place so that you are able to convince the management on the thing? Abhishek, if you can take it up.
Thank you. I thought you would never ask ROI. And normally when वो भी डेटा में, और वो हिंदी में जब कोई आके पिच करता है CDP ले लो, ये ले लो, तो मैं पूछता हूँ भाई पैसे कितने बनेंगे, right? And I think that's the big one, because I'll combine the two, right? Legacy data comes in different forms, formats, different levels of sanctity, cleanliness. The biggest challenge is creating pipelines, putting it into one format so that a tool accepts it, then connecting it to another format so that the tool gives an output, right? This is where the biggest expense is. Second biggest expense is maintaining these systems, right? Any small change requires either outsourced third-party vendors, or if you have in-house vendors. And big question is who drives the ROI at the end of the day. If a user can make decision faster, make a decision better, more efficient, saves the company some money or makes some money for the company, that drives ROI. But this is something which is changed. Like I am a hobbyist coder in AI ML. Earlier I used to write Python algorithms. Now I do vibe coding. There's a tool called Cursor. I go and say this is 1 million lines of data. Give me customer segmentation. This nimbleness is what will drive ROI in the future. And built-in AI ML models, which are very hard, take away the ROI fact, because then you have to have people manning those hard models, right? So as of now, ROI in data is very, very difficult to prove because of the input cost is so high and the time period to realize any return is even higher, and to communicate that is even more difficult to the management, to the CFO and the CEO. So how do we drive ROI is that every user tomorrow can have access to his own platform, which he can churn around, play with that data lake instead of building a layer of BI, whether it's Microsoft BI or whether it's Tableau, and then use those reports to drive business forward. So nimbleness, I think, will be key to driving ROI, which is a big challenge with any big technology provider, not just a data lake, but anything we layer on top.
Can I come in the middle? Interesting one, because you said CDP, right? So, सबसे पहली बात, we are not a CDP. Okay, let me start with that. And because I have, had the privilege of selling CDPs at Oracle, which is, I think it was called Blue Kai. And in those days, first, second, and third party data was something that people used to kind of go gaga about and ask, कितने profiles है आपके पास, and so on and so forth. But nobody asked the question of how relevant are these profiles and how authentic, or what's the kind of age of this profile, right? So that's the reason probably that never cut the, as in we could not see the kind of ROI on that, because, and like they say, if the product is strong enough or a solution is strong enough, it will flourish. But if it is not, it will live its life and, go the way a lot of other platforms have gone. Today, the CDP talks about no second party, no third party. We help you kind of harmonize with your first party data. Again, a lot of English, but what else can you do? And therefore, the CDP kind of is limited towards, let's say, marketing, or in a way service, or I think there are lots of CDPs out there. There's data cloud out there, so on and so forth. But something like and I'll be open about also taking names of competition here, because they are amazing. If you look at the data platforms, or platforms like a Snowflake, or you mentioned Fabric, right? You mentioned Fabric, sorry. They are very different. They are not a CDP. They what they are helping you do is not just do something which is specific to a marketing or a service or so on and so forth, but it also kind of goes beyond that by going and saying that, okay, you have a challenge in, let's say, HR or a supply chain or a finance or something completely unique, and I could be able to help you with that. To put some numbers, because the numbers don't lie, I will give you examples of how we've helped a customer save money. So Baggit, which is Bajaj Allianz General Insurance, has been a customer. It's a published case study. They have been a customer for about 2.5 years now. What they're doing is not just the reporting. I think they have about 900 plus reports, from CEO to retail to insurance sellers, or so on and so forth, to also kind of go one level above and say, what do I launch my next product on, right? I don't know how you want to make it tangible, but one is that. The second is anomaly detection is a use case that they do. So for example, they have a customer who had put cases in 15 different courts for a claim of maybe some 4-5 lakh rupees. And they found out that it's the same guy putting it in with the same witness in 15 different courts. And they were able to find that out through Snowflake and go and say that, okay, ये 2 जगह तो हमने पैसे दे दिए हैं, but जो बाकी 12 जगह है, and therefore that 12 into 4, 48 lakh rupees is something that they were able to sell. There's a saying, right, that you don't drink your own champagne, but we do at Snowflake. So we're using Snowflake at Snowflake to understand what's the kind of inventory on laptops. And every single year, we are saving millions of dollars by making sure that we order at the right time. You and I were having a conversation on कि सबको real time data चाहिए, but किसी को ये नहीं पता कि करना क्या है, right? What we are trying to do, and it's not really real time, but what we are trying to do is we're trying to understand that, okay, if there's somebody who's joined, it's been a crazy growth for Snowflake in India. We've gone 3x in I think, for 16 months. So we're trying to make sure that it's at the time of joining or maybe a week before that is when you place that inventory, because we've gone from 100 to 300 and 300 to 600 in a span of whatever 18 months, right? So, and this is just India. So imagine the global footprint, right? What's the kind of money that we would be able to save? But yeah, quick examples that came to my mind. That's why I kind of came in the middle. I'm sorry, but just thought I'll share it before I forget.
How much money do you put into all these platforms, right? Everyone talks about creating a data lake and doing this and doing that. The question is, what is the ROI around it? Same thing, right? You got to keep asking that question again and again, and also as a business, what's the purpose of what you're trying to do, right? Very, very important to do that. I'll give you an example, and it's probably a little different from what we're talking at this point of time, but a few months back, we had a different POS system. Now we've moved to a new POS, right? The next thing I know, every day there's a requirement for a new promotion to be created in the store. Why do you need this promotion? No idea. Because some competitor is doing it, I want to do it, right? What is the ROI of that promotion? I don't know that. Are you looking at the ROI after you've created the promotion? The answer is probably no, because you're not even thinking that way, right? So for everything, you got to figure out the money that you're putting into doing all these fancy things. Is the business, what's the right word, progressive enough or mature enough to understand what are the returns out of all these things that you try to do? So you have to keep questioning that at any point of time and then invest in it, right? And again, real time, to me, I think the definition of real time also needs to be understood. What is real time for operations vis-a-vis supply chain, vis-a-vis someone else, right? And what are the actionables by seeing other data? Okay, I'll give you the data real time of the sale that happened in my store at this point of time at 7 o'clock. Are you going to take some action at 7 o'clock to increase the sales? If the answer is no, then you don't need that data, right? So again, for everything, you have to take a step back and figure out what is the journey, what are you trying to achieve by it, and then take a call in terms of how much of an investment you need to do. If you're talking about e-commerce, it's a very different game altogether. And you need those answers very quickly to be able to understand the customer journey. Is he clicking on something? He's gone all the way to the cart, not bought it. Maybe you want to engage with him directly at that point of time and tell him, hey, you didn't click on this, can you go and buy it, and whatever around that. So different things can mean different things, and you invest accordingly in it. But that's where I am.
Thanks. Vinod, your view on data as revenue versus data as technical expense?
So there is this famous line people keep on talking of, data is the new oil, right? I keep on telling my team, where is the refinery for it? Because everyone sits on tons and tons of data. And if you are not able to mine it right, or if you're not able to bring it together and mine it right, it's useless for you. I mean, eventually, it's all about what sense you are able to derive out of it, and even also connecting it to the ROI part of it, where you are able to transform the data to actually create some meaningful outputs. Kunal was rightly saying right now, saying if there is a requirement of a promotion that is to be there, what is the ROI on it to start with? And this is so true for the technical side also, because eventually IT teams are always, or the tech teams are always looked as cost center, saying ye to kharcha hi karenge, kuch bhi naya platform or another 2 crore spend, and it is going to be we don't know what we are going to get out of it. SAP is a classic example, by the way. Ranjan, I'm sure you share the pen, but you too, right? All of us maybe. Move from an ECC to heck to rise, and so on, God knows what else. But anyways, coming back to this topic, So it is very, very important that whatever we are doing on data is actually connecting back to the business KPIs and not necessarily the tech side of it. There are two very, very clear. So normally everyone wants to talk about revenues as an ROI or whatever work that you do is to eventually culminate to more revenue. But there are two aspects which are not as much been looked into. The first one is the speed of data. How fast the data is available to you. And again, Kunal mentioned about, do you need it at 7 a.m. in the morning? The answer is no, not necessarily. 99.9% of the time it is not required. But they need it, the report has to be in my inbox by 7 a.m. and I will use it maybe at 11 a.m. So the speed of data at the right time to be available. If it is needed at 11, let it drop in at 10:30 and it can actually take care of itself. The speed of data is very, very important. And the second and more intangible kind of a thing that is required to be looked at when we are working on data transformation strategies or any data related action is actually the trust on data. Right? Today, the end users have to have that trust on the data. So whatever information that they're getting, are they trusting it enough? That is also an ROI. We are probably not touching upon it as much, but if the user is confident that what data I'm getting and taking decisions basis that, it adds a lot of value to the business and not just having a doubt in their mind saying, oh, I am not sure whether this number is right and will I be able to play with it or not, take a decision out of it or not, and so on and so forth. So I think that is how probably it has been looked at.
Interesting. I think we should wind it up. Just one last question. How do you balance data accessibility for decision making with stringent security and compliance? Compliance and security very, very challenging. So we all have to wait for the DPDP Act to come out now to answer that. So maybe Abhishek or Ranjan, you would want to share your thoughts.
I think this is the most toughest thing to solve for. Because if you look at within our organizations, people keep moving. How do you keep track of what access, what data rights that person had? I'll give you a classic example. There used to be a merchandiser who used to be in Jack and Jones for a region. And over a period of time, that person moved on from Jack and Jones to Veramoda. How do you keep track of when this guy is moving? Because nobody is going to come and tell you that merchandiser has moved on from Jack and Jones to Veramoda. What they will come and tell you always is give him an access for Veramoda. They will never come and tell you he has moved on from Jack and Jones. How do you keep track of that? That's one aspect. The second big aspect of it is when people have moved on. The second big aspect of it is about what data you are publishing earlier. Maybe at a later age, somebody has come back and presented that same data with two more additional data points into that same similar kind of a dashboard or a report that one would have built, and you will never get to know that the old report or the old dashboard that you had created is no more of use. The moment you go back and ask people, are you still using it? Nobody is going to raise his or her hand and say, no, I don't use it. They will always come back and tell you, yes, we will need it. उसका सबसे classic तरीका होता है, बंद कर दो. Somebody will make a noise, and when they make a noise, you get to know who is really using it. So I think security is a given aspect. Compliance is a given aspect. But I think what we also need to realize is compliance and security should not be the owner of tech, ownership of tech. I firmly believe that, because you are only executing it, my friend. You are the custodian of it. You are not the end user. You are not the person. It is the function head who should be accountable to manage that, take that responsibility. Roles and responsibilities you don't even get to know when they change, when people move on, when the new responsibilities gets assigned. The same person in Jack and Jones, an additional responsibility has got assigned. You add another role to that person because you would have broken down that role into multiple roles. What happens if he's moved on and he's no more taking up the role earlier that he was doing? So I think it's a complex situation. It's something that we all keep fighting against. But I firmly believe this should not be that we are only custodians as tech. We should not be The end users who should be responsible for it, we should definitely be accountable for it, but not responsible. We will have to make each of the function owners responsible for it because they know it better, because they only approve for new thing to be added, they never come back and tell you what needs to be removed. So security is a critical aspect, but then I'm sorry to say it is always a challenge for all of us to handle. And I'm sure this is a problem with everybody. At least I have seen this in all my life.
Yeah, I think I completely resonate with you when you say it should be the function owners. But when you go and tell function owners, they say, हम तो IT वाले हैं नहीं, हमें तो पता नहीं. So we have the chicken and egg story, and always the ball lands in our court. And like you gave the example of POS machine and promotions, I have an example of reports being created for every user, irrespective of the fact that the information is available. Now, compliance is about what you capture, security is about what you publish at the end of the day. And in between is how you encrypt the whole data piece. So we have had incidents in the industry at multiple companies where people steal away data, whether it's financial institutions or whether it's retail institutions. So these are two key aspects. In terms of capturing, it's a function of what the business is doing. If you are in e-commerce, you will definitely capture the address, you will capture the name, you will capture the phone numbers, you will capture the purchasing behavior. Then how do you code it to an ID and never ever reveal who the person is behind that ID for the processing of data? But easier said than done. And biggest aspect is that there are so many reports floating around. People still use Excel on top of it. How do you control this? The only answer is there's no single tool to do this, unfortunately, which can actually see and drive this compliance behavior. Only way we can do it is a single source of truth, that there will be only reports. There are frequent asks, give me access to parent system. I'm sorry, you don't even know how to use it. What are you going to do with that parent system even if we get access? No, we want to pull our own reports. Now, this is a clear red flag when it comes to security, right? So there should be one tool, again, for simplicity, a Tableau or a BI which publishes all the reports, and no commonality between reports, but that means you're making 40 reports for 40 people and each of them are seeing the same data, but in different columns or different rows. So can you implement it? Very, very difficult, but yes, we make an attempt. So levers is something we keep track of, who's left. And so there is a process which we manage, that who's left, who has access to reports. We have a tool which tells us that, and we strictly enforce the levers part. But change in department, very difficult. Who wants to see which report? Very, very difficult. So yeah, it's a gray area, still evolving is what I would say.
My answer to, a simple answer to this is you're right. It's not something that anybody can address at this point in time. But yeah, there is, there are things that we are trying to do with some of the existing customers, which is the, for example, the RBAC, role-based access controls, right? Which is, again, like Abhishek mentioned, it's, let's say, somebody moving in, moving out, but yeah, interdepartmental, not happening. I think that's it from my side. I won't hold you guys, but happy to, Yeah, yeah.
The activities and the things that they will do also, that also needs to be customized to every organization. Because every organization is, you call a merchandiser, the same merchandiser is doing something, 10 different things. We already have a recipe to play. That recipe has to be always ready. It is so much more difficult, and it's so dynamic for every organization. The same organization at different stages of their evolving journey, the same role will change. Merchandiser was with Jack and Jones 10 years earlier, and the role of that he or she would play, and the merchandiser today that he or she would play is very different. So it's not a simple thing to solve actually. It's a complex thing. Journey. It's a journey. You have to keep track of it.
Thanks, guys.